Lovers and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. As you already know, I hate Shinji and think Eva as a whole is pretty mediocre, so to piss off any leftover Eva fans, we're going to be answering the question, is Shinji Ikari from Evangelion a homosexual? I've put together 3 different points going from my worst to best arguments, so let's not waste any more time and get right into it. My first argument has a lot of ideas being thrown around, but to put it simply, mannerisms and personality. Shinji alone does look and act pretty gay, but that's not entirely enough evidence to push the idea that he's a homosexual. You could just say based on the gay way he walks or the queer tone he uses, especially when talking to women, but again, I don't find that to be enough. That's where I tell you, the viewer, to look at his personality. Everyone knows that you use a completely different tone when you talk to the boys versus with women. Shinji, on the other hand, doesn't have that whatsoever. He talks to Toji and Kensuke the same way he talks to Asuka or Masato, which alone isn't enough evidence, but it's a start. Then you gotta factor in his sexual tendencies, which are obviously very submissive. You could counter by pointing out he's surrounded by a lot of dominant women, but he's the exact same way with Kaworu, who tends to give off more Switch vibes. That again wasn't my final factor coming to this conclusion, but there's one more piece of evidence to solidify this argument, and that's his relationship with his parents. Specifically his father Gendo Ikari. All Shinji wants is his dad to respect and see him for who he truly is. Which is something all gay men secretly want from their parents. A friend told me that. And finally, he has no idea how to treat women because he never had a mom to teach him how, throwing his sexuality off course to eventually lead to more degenerate, sinful behavior. So let's recount. Shinji doesn't change his humor or tone depending on the gender he's talking to. Shinji, also generally speaking, has very submissive mannerisms throughout every relationship he has. And finally, he lacks a stable relationship with both of his parents. I don't think that one needs much more explaining. Now, the reason I put this one first is you could easily just disagree with this conversation by saying something like,
he's submissive in general, and sensitive because he never truly had friends or family to connect with, leading to his shy behavior. The entire point of the anime was showing his growth in relationships.
Or lack thereof. So it's a 50-50 depending on who you ask. Now that we went over why his mannerisms and personality is gay, let's talk about his boyfriend. At the end of the anime, we meet Kaworu. The one character that, according to Shinji, was the one person he felt he could truly connect with. Now, on surface level, you might expect me to just end this here. Maybe point out a little mistranslation and call it a day. But here at the JellohLuvr HQ, we use real points with real arguments. And ragebait works 10 times better if you have reasons, but that's besides the point. The first thing I'd urge you to think about is how Shinji's personality changes throughout their relationship, where I could also point out one of my least favorite aspects about him. When Shinji gets closer to Kaworu and opens up more, he doesn't really change that much as a character anyway. If anything, this relationship shows us a glimpse at Shinji's true personality. Though briefly, we could tell his existing traits, more or less, stay the same rather than show any sign of change. And I want to reinstate that being a sub doesn't necessarily make you gay. Well, it does, but for the sake of conversation, let's go ahead and pretend that it doesn't. At the start of End of Evangelion, we see Shinji bust a quickie to Asuka in the hospital. Now this, boys, is where I'm going to need you to stay with me. I'm not going to pretend like Shinji wasn't getting any motion, because he undeniably was. I'm not going to forget that after Masato promised to fuck him, he locked in and came back 3-1. But if I'm going to remember all of that, I must also have you remember the fact that it is impossible for a male to be bisexual. If you like dick a little bit, you're gay. You are not whatever the fuck bisexual is. Only women can be bi. If you're a guy and say you're bisexual, you're still stuck in the closet because what? You find women attractive too? Who the fuck doesn't? So in the end, Shinji is not straight. You can make whatever conclusion you want to come to from that, but that's what it is. My third argument just reinstates point number 2. After Rei dies, Masato, though subtly, asks Shinji if he wants to have sex, where he says no! Now, what normal 14-year-old boy would say no in this situation? Especially considering after some amount of time, he was in a state of disbelief and wanted personal reassurance he wasn't gay, which was the scene in the hospital, if you're curious. And eventually, Masato ends up curing his homosexuality, something only a hag could do, as their superior. Or maybe not, maybe he just tricked himself into believing he wasn't gay anymore, but in my headcanon, it's because of Masato. In conclusion, I think it's pretty safe to say that Shinji Ikari is in fact a homosexual. You could stretch that into him just being bisexual, but all the real niggas know that's the same thing. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. If any of you are the type of person to say, Shinji's literally me, I'm also going to call an audible here and just assume that you're gay as well. If you made it to the end of the video, make sure to drop a big, fat, overweight fan in the comments. And as always, take care, everyone.